And this, I did a poll last Wednesday of like questions or things that people wanted to hear about regarding like creatives and mental health. Um, I want you all to speak to like those moments, whether it be because you're just having like a hard season or whatever, like those moments where you feel like you lack creativity or like creativity has just kind of been like sucked out of you or whatever. Um, Speak to that. I want you guys to kind of share like your personal journeys of like feeling that way, and how you have, I guess, gotten out of that, or you know what your thoughts about that is, and then insight that you would offer to other people who may feel that way.
So for me, it was I've gone through it multiple times where it put me in a pretty bad depression, just because I worked myself up way too much. I literally was just taking on projects, and I kind of got away from the I'm doing this because I love it to I need to pay my bills. And it got to the point where I literally was on the verge of just like, I don't even want to do this anymore. Like, I'm fine not doing this ever again. Don't want to do it. And then I was like, no, you know what? I actually love this. No one's going to take the passion that I have for this away from me. And I kind of had to take a step back and to just realize, okay, take a break, go play guitar, go skate, go work out, do something to get your mind off of it. That way you can come back to it refreshed. Doesn't have to overwhelm yourself. You don't have to put so much on your plate. Just take it one step at a time.
Would you say that you had a boundary issue?
Yeah. It was bad. It was bad. I literally did not know how to say no. I would literally just take one. Hey, I need this done. Oh yeah, I could do it. While I have 10 other projects on hand that I need to finish by Friday. So once I realized the power, no, it was a great feeling.
I think sometimes we as creatives feel like when we're experiencing a dryness in our creative process, we have to force it, you know. And I learned how to just say, okay, it's not coming today. Like it's moments in the studio where I'm recording, and I wrote the verse and I got the chorus and then I'm forcing the rest out, and I'm like, oh no, this is not working. This is not. And I learned to say, okay, let's come back this tomorrow. Like it's just not coming today, and not feel guilty or feel less than or feel like I'm not good enough because I'm not producing at that moment. Sometimes you have to be okay with saying today is not that day. Tomorrow might be the day. And if tomorrow's not the day, that's okay too. You know, because as it comes in waves, you know, and we have to be okay with that. Sometimes it is not happening. And for some of us, it makes us go to that dark place. I've been there too, where it's like, golly, I have not recorded and I don't feel inspired and I don't feel like going and I don't feel like recording or singing or doing anything, you know, that isolation phase where it's just like, ooh. But it's okay. I think the depression comes when we feel the weight of it's not okay. It's okay to be in those phases where you have to take a break and literally say, it's okay. Tomorrow might be the day, or next week might be the day. It doesn't mean you're not productive. It just means in that moment, that specific project is just not happening.
And that goes back to understanding your pace.
Yeah.
For me, there's this thing where I think a lot of it is it's not always about there being dryness or a drought as much as it's about the fact that you can be so overworked that you're not producing because you're not rested. And that's why I believe that rest has to be just as, if not more important as creating. And it doesn't matter like whatever space of creativity you exist in. I think as a creative period, we have to glamorize and make rest a priority like we do the output, because if you're not your best self, you're not going to. And I can go back and I can go back and read books. I can go back and read emails. I can go back and replay Zooms, listen to things that I've done, look at projects that I've worked on, and tell like what state I was in, because the quality proves that at that given moment, I was just producing. I wasn't my best self. And I think you have to, get in environments too. I think, and you'll hear me say environments a lot, because I think that environments are so crucial, because sometimes your environment can teach you things, or teach you to normalize things that you don't do in your own consciousness. And so being around people that, make rest a priority, that make self-care a priority, you start to adapt those things, and you see the result of how it changes everything. And I think too, because being a creative can be such a complex thing, you have to have simple and practical tools to lean on. And I heard someone say, I believe it was Ahji, about sometimes you're just not inspired, and I think, and the lack of inspiration is, sometimes it can be because we just don't have those go-tos for when we are feeling, uninspired. Like for me, it could be music, it could be watching a television show, it might be reading a book, it could be calling a random friend. Just like all these like things that I can kind of like go and pull on when I don't feel inspired. And sometimes it works for what I need to produce, and sometimes I'm inspired but still not to the point where I can actually produce something. And in those moments, I've learned not to force it, because if you force it, you're not going to even get the end result that you're after.
Yep.
For sure. You mentioned environments, which made me think about relationships. And so my question to you all, and we're kind of like changing gears a little bit, but we can't look at our mental and emotional well-being without looking at relationships, whether that's family, intimate, peers, whatever. As a creative, what does your relational health look like? I think creatives' lives are kind of different, So I want to know, okay, what do your relational lives or your relational health look like as a result of being a creative? And just check it in. And maybe that question is kind of weird to ask, because I feel like depending on where your emotional and mental health is, like that also impacts your relational health. So if you're not well mentally and emotionally, that's going to bleed into your relationships.
Yeah.
But I think that, like I said, there's another piece in terms of just like being a creative. So can you speak to all of that?
So I think it's a weird balance to where it's just like people like, well, in my instance, people either know I'm working on a project, or like if they don't hear from me for days, they're just like, I know he's alive, but he's probably working on something. He'll reach out whenever the day comes. So it's just like a weird balance where people kind of know, hey, I haven't heard from you in like a week, or hey, yeah, I know you're working on this project. Did you want to go take a break and go do something, or something like that? I think everyone in my life now kind of gets to that point, but at first it was just like people thought I was ghosting them. People thought I was just didn't want to be talkative or anything. I'm like, no, I'm
your
literally.
Communication is trash. Do y'all hear that?
It's trash. It's trash. I'm not even gonna. It's trash.
Now, I feel like there are a lot of creatives that use being a creative as an excuse to have poor communication skills.
That too.
That's the case, though, but I think it's a very, very, very common thing.
I think I've realized that even in past relationships with like girlfriends and stuff like that, I saw the disconnect, and like, oh, you're a terrible communicator. I'm like, you know what? That's an issue I want to fix. And it would even reach over into working with clients where I'd be having their project for 2 weeks and then not email them or update them. So it doesn't even just roll over into like intimate relationships, but just like your work as well, of like, hey, I'm okay, the project's going fine, but we just get so wrapped up in the project to where we're just like, oh, I'm just going to immerse myself in this and forget about the outside world.
And that was going to be my question. So do you all Do you live so much in your head that you forget to communicate with people
For
around?
me, I do it so like it's so second nature that sometimes because I spend so much time here, I believe that my relationships and people that I'm in relationship with too are here, and so like I know it, so I can subconsciously believe that you do too. And I've been really working on this thing where I don't deal with people or engage people as if they know what's in my head. And sometimes that's really
Yeah.
hard to do because I live there. And so I've had to, I've been apologizing a lot lately. Like, you know what? I'm so sorry. I thought I said this to you. And it's in my mind. And so it even becomes this thing too where it's like, I'm trying to move from having good intentions to having like the, oh my God, I'm so sorry, y'all.
No, you're good.
To having like like to go beyond good intentions to actually like doing what I intended to do. But it's hard because I'm like all here.
Yeah, it's a hard switch to turn off sometimes because it's like you may be out to eat and you're just like, oh, I figured out the solution to the problem, but you're trying to be present in that moment of I'm here, but then you don't want to lose it as well. It's like, what do I do?
I think it's a lot of accountability, understanding, grace, and balance. Trying to and I will go so far to say maybe, and I'm going to say maybe, it may be different between men and women. And I'm just saying, and
Let's go there. Let's go there.
I believe that it could be different because I believe that men dive into their work differently. And I also believe that women prioritize their relationships differently. And that's just me. I believe that because I make space and time for what it is I want to do. Yep. And I'm not going to say I'm so engulfed that I forgot to text you, because if in that moment in my mind, even at a thought, I will stop. It just goes into prioritizing. Like, is the person worth stopping for? And that's just what and that's me. It may not be y'all, because I said it may be different. And I do believe that there is a total engulfing in your work and becoming that whole process and being so embedded in it that you just take a step away. But for me, my relational health depends on my ability to balance and to communicate and to be accountable for what I say. If I tell my person I'm going to text you back at blah, 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 even if the time gets away from me and I look at the clock and I'm like, oh my God, it's an hour after. In that moment, I'm still in that moment. I'm texting. You know what I mean? My bad. I'm sorry. It took this long. Da 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 da. But I've seen some cases where people can go days, maybe even weeks, without saying anything. And that's like a lack of accountability, in my opinion. That's just
I love that because there are different dynamics between men and women sometimes, you know.
Yeah.
So I love that you actually brought that into the conversation, that some of that may also be how men communicate versus women. So based on what Ahji said, Khas and Joe, I mean, do you agree, disagree?
So I agree.
Did you hear everything that was said? Oh, you did? Oh, okay. I wasn't sure. Okay, go ahead.
So I agree. I think for us, it's more of like we're so used to just be, the society thing of like, oh, you have to provide, you have to do this. It's kind of like you're on a one-track mind, a tunnel vision of just like, oh, I have to do this. But at the same time, you have to realize, you can't just shut everybody else out. You have other relationships that need to be taken care of. Yes, your work is there, but outside of work, you still have other people, other friends, families, everybody else that still, maybe asking you something. So it's just finding that balance. And for me, I used to really work all day, all night. If I text you, I text you, but you have to realize, okay, at some point you have to cut it off and show attention to other things, other people. like even now, I usually stop working at 8:30, shut everything down, disconnect from work completely, and give people the attention that they need. If they text me or if they call me, I call them back. I text them, hey, what's going on? And most people know that now. Just like, okay, he's free around this time. I know he's done working. We can converse then.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely think that while I don't think that communication is so much gender specific, like a lot of people like to make it out, I do think there are some nuances though, where men might not be as great as communicators as women, but I've definitely seen it where the roles have definitely reversed. But I do think that too, a lot of men come from spaces where communication has felt like control or suffocation, and so I tend to naturally resist it because it's almost like somewhere along the lines, like this demand to like check in, where you at, what you're doing, let me know something. It can equate to or be interpreted as like control. And
that's a great point.
yeah, and I think it's something that people can naturally resist. And so what I've just learned to do in my personal life is to set boundaries, but to also be accountable to relationships, because a person isn't at fault for wanting to communicate with you when they're in a relationship with you, and regardless of what type of relationship it is. Like I remember, like last year, I went completely off the radar, and I didn't say anything to anybody, and it wasn't like it was. I had like a day that I had never had before, and I was like, "Yo, I need 3 days of not talking to anybody." And I went. Day one started at like 12 o'clock in the day, and prior to that, I was talking to people. I was in group chats. People hitting me up. I'm having all these conversations, and literally, like at 12 o'clock, I was like, I remember like it was yesterday. I was laying in my bed, and I was like, I'm done. Like, and I didn't say anything. Like, I just faded out of every conversation, business wise, friendship wise, anything. Like, I stopped all communication, and then I got mad because everybody was like, "Where's Kaz? Where's Kaz? Where's Kaz?" And then calling other people. Like, you know, like when you do like those, when you go ghost, you always have like that one person that can get a response out of you. And that person texted me, was like, "Oh, your dad's looking for you. Chandler's looking for you. Justin's looking for you. This person's looking for you. That person's looking for you." And I'm like, okay, this ain't okay to everybody. Not saying I'm gonna hit them up. And then, like, you know, I remember getting like so mad at them because they were mad that I went ghost. And I was mad because I felt like they should understand it, because again, I'm all in my mind. And so I know all these things that I'm dealing with. And I'm like, you should know. And it's like, no, they shouldn't know, because I should have communicated it. And it has nothing to do with the fact that I was wrong for taking days to myself. It was just the approach, because it closed this door that was literally just wide open to communication. And since that day, it has taught me to just like, yeah, you can have your boundaries and decide to pull away and withdraw, but there's a way to do it. And so now I'm just like,
I love that. I love all of that. And so I think that what people can gain, or what I've gained, is that, you know, when you are creative, and when you're maybe you're not a creative but you're journeying with a creative, there has to be, to Ahji's point, there has to be grace and accountability, but there's also a way of there needs to be an awareness of like getting out of your head, or realizing that, hey, I'm making these assumptions that like somebody else understands or knows what I'm thinking, and so I have to kind of get out of my head and communicate these things to people so that they know where I am and they know how to move accordingly.
And that control piece, I just have to say,
that was really good.
That was a great point, because, and sometimes it's in the way we communicate that translates as control. You know what I mean? It's in the way we say things, and the way we, you know, word certain questions, or instead of saying like, "Where you at?" You know, hey, just checking in on you. I, you know, haven't heard from you. You know, it's in a simple rewording, but that is a good point because in some ways, in my experiences, I could change my communication, and when I did change my communication, it changed the response. You know what I mean? Because when people feel like they have to answer to you and not be accountable to you, it's a whole different thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I too, like, I think there's this there needs to be a conversation about relationship doesn't mean ownership. And I think sometimes when you become familiar with people because of how close you are, you can start to have like this sense of entitlement, like you're entitled to their time, you're entitled to talk to them. And I do believe that in certain relationships, there is, you know, you have certain obligations or certain duties, but even in that, you still don't own that person. Like that person still has a free will, and I think you have to you can hold a person accountable to the duties of a relationship while still respecting them as a person. And I think it's, to your point, Ahji, it's as simple as word choice sometimes, and in the tone in which you choose to express something. Because for me, tone is everything. Like.
Okay.
You are trying to tell you because your tone and it becomes a thing where like people meet you at where you are, and so if
your energy,
this energy, I'ma match you.
Don't be surprised, okay?
Yeah.
And sometimes that looks like a phone call and not a text, because text is toneless, and you cannot. Sometimes I can say certain things in text and the tone not be conveyed correctly. So I got to pick up the phone and say, hey, I didn't mean it like that.
Or send a voice note.
Yes, send a voice note.
Send a voice note. Leave a voice note. Do people still do that? Leave a voicemail.
People have a better chance of having a conversation with me by voice note than by phone these days. It's so convenient.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I want to challenge you guys. I think that all of what you said is valid, but I think so. What is the balance between watching your tone, ways of communicating, all of those things, but then also reflecting? Let's just say something is said, or let's just say somebody is checking on us and we are triggered by it. You know, like there's something about what is said or how something is said that kind of triggers us to respond in a way that maybe is not called for, or maybe, you know, it just wasn't supposed to like happen like that. So what's the balance between like assessing, like, okay, what about this moment is triggering me and causing me to shut down or respond that way, but also like, okay, let me watch my tone, let me make sure I'm communicating well. Does that make sense? And so I guess it's a question, but also a statement of, I think that we do those things that you all mentioned, but then also self-assessing to say, okay, if I am being, especially if it's somebody you know and you're in close relationship with, like let's say Ahji says something to me and like I know Ahji, right? That's my person. But then something about like her communication in that moment or her checking in like triggered something and I responded or felt a certain way emotionally, then yeah, I can address like, hey, maybe you could have communicated or asked your question differently. But also like, okay, why am I being triggered by this? Being that I know Ahji, and you get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Still, even if you know me and I know you, we're two different people. So you know what I mean? As a person that's in relationship with you, I have to learn you. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to use the same basis of communication for everyone, because some things I can talk to you about and some ways I can talk to you, I cannot talk to another person.
Sure.
So I think it's just knowing who you're talking to and what they need. And that people may think that's going too deep in communication with people, but I think that you do cater to the person that you're in relationship with, you know, whether that be a friendship, business relationship, whatever. It's important to know that person. And and as far as checking your own emotions and what triggers you, for me, that's my private thing that I can communicate later. You know what I'm saying? I still respond in a respectful way until I realize what it is in me and I'm able to properly communicate that and say, okay, this is why I didn't like that. You know what I mean? Because if I don't, that could turn into a heated conversation. So that looks like private time on my part. Why did I even feel like that? You know what I mean? Checking my emotions at the door. You get what I'm saying?
I think sometimes when I found myself triggered by a simple like, yo, just checking on you, haven't heard from you text message, it's probably because I'm somewhere in my mind and I'm feeling all of the things that I'm feeling in a given moment. And even though it has nothing to do with the person, I'm annoyed in that moment, and I make it about something that it's not. And I think in that space of being self-aware, when you kind of like take a moment to step back, like, yo, why did I even like go off like that, or why did it require all of this when it really didn't require all of that? It's those triggers, and I think sometimes too you have to like be a couple of steps ahead. And when you find yourself in certain funks, just go ahead and communicate that so people can know to like leave you alone and be upfront enough to be like, yo, I'm about to take a day, and I would really not rather, I'd rather not talk about what's wrong. But if I feel up to it, once I get out of this funk, we can have a conversation. But right now, I just need my space. And I think that's preventative conversation, because it eliminates anybody, reaching out while you're maneuvering whatever you're maneuvering. But most times when I've gotten like upset that somebody's texting me when I don't, or reaching out when I don't want to be bothered, it's because I feel like you should know that I'm bothered, or I feel like I just don't like. Why are you texting me? Like I'm dealing with this. I'm going through, like, I don't know. Leave me alone. And I'm like, but they can't know that because I didn't have a conversation with them.
In your head.
I think it comes from like first being like open and honest, like having that open door of communication of just like, hey, this is what I'm going through. Don't need anything right now. Like just I'll be fine. But then I also believe that I do think that there's a such thing as like relationship PTSD, be it boyfriend, girlfriend, to where like someone may text you something and you'd be like, okay, previously this has been something that's gone way downhill. So you kind of like prepare yourself to be like, all right, I know this is about to go somewhere. And you're just like, oh, bad. So it's just like that preconceived notion of just like, oh, this is going to be terrible. It's about to end in an argument. I'm about to get, it kind of gives you that anxiety about it, just like, I don't want to have this conversation. I just rather not talk to anybody or not talk to them. I'll talk to them when I talk to them when the coast is clear. Sometimes that could end up making it worse as well. So it's just like being open and honest of just be like, hey, this is what's going on. Or even if you don't even want to talk about it, like, hey, I got a lot going on right now. Just give me a minute.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So communication, period.
Yeah,
I think it's important, and I think too. Ahji made a good point when she referenced like, you should know a person and how to communicate, like what their triggers are, or like what their preferred method of conversation or communication is. And I think that also speaks to the fact too that, like, especially as creatives, like, we don't have a lot of space to have a long list of close connections, and because of how we're wired, and then two, what it takes to maintain those type of relationships. And I think sometimes we're so, and then maybe it can be traced back to people pleasing, but I think like people that feel all of this pressure to have like all of these friends and to be everything to everybody, like that is the most tiring existence to live.
Yeah.
It's too much. And I think over the last couple of months, I've realized that I could have different types of relationships with people, and all of them don't have to be deep. And some of them will have deep moments without, it just being, it don't have to be that. Like, and it has like really saved my life. Like, yeah. I've got so much peace in realizing that I don't have to, like, I'm not for everybody, and everybody's not for me.
There are levels to intimacy, and it's important to understand where, having the proper understanding of like who to place where.
Yeah, definition. And I told someone earlier today too. I was like, I'm trying to think. Oh, so I posted like the 4 different types of relationships. So it talks about like friendships, acquaintanceships, all of that, casual friends and things like that. And one of my friends responded, and she was like, I think if we learned how to put people in compartments, we won't always feel the need to cut people off. And I was like, yo, that's actually so real. Like, cancel culture is such a thing. And I'm like, we're canceling people because we haven't learned how to put them in their proper place.
Yes.
Because everybody ain't like, they don't have to be canceled. You're just not for this area of my life. And maybe not right now, and that's okay.
Yes.
No, that's real. That's real.
Everybody don't have to like. It's weird. Like, I feel like sometimes we feel obligated that people have to have like access to the deep places of us right away.
Mm-hmm.
I'm good. I love you, and I can love you from a distance. Like, you don't have to.
Go listen to my album.
BTW, Ahji Cook, she got an EP out, and one of her songs is called Distance. Sometimes I gotta love you from a distance.
Yes. I learned that the hard way. And then the thing is, just because I have a deep conversation with you one time don't mean we deep friends after that. It means that was in time.
Yep, that's it. Yes. With her no clothes having self. You better.
Is it on iTunes? Is it on iTunes too?
Yes. It's everywhere. Go cop that. Go get it.
I love he asked that question. He said it's on iTunes, not Apple Music.
Yeah, because I like to buy music.
Please buy my album.
But yeah, no, that's really good. I think I'm so glad that we talked about that relational aspect, because like I said, you can't look at your mental and emotional well-being as one person and not realize how that impacts your environment, to Khas point, in your relationship in general. So
absolutely,
we're gonna wrap it up because I'm looking at the time, but I have two things, two other things that I wanted to briefly ask. So in the poll, somebody asked you all to speak to how creatives sometimes mask their emotional and mental struggles behind their art. And I want you guys to be vulnerable, right? That's probably hard.
Yeah.
Huh?
This is the wrap-up question?
Well, the wrap-up question is, how do you feel your creativity? But this is the question. Have you ever masked your mental and emotional struggles behind your art? And that may be uncomfortable to answer, but like I said, I want to challenge you guys to not only share, but to lean into the discomfort, because, those moments is what people connect to and what can help others. So feel free to
like short answers are like SAT answers, like
somewhere in the middle.
Okay.
Close to the short, but somewhere in the middle.
I'll answer. Well, the easy answer is yes. I think that's what art is. Art is the language of survived pain, and so we're putting all of the things that make us into the books, into the music, into how we lead, how we show up. I believe that it's so weird because like there's like this two-layered thing where on one end it's the language of survive pain, and then it's an expression of self and freedom, and then sometimes it's all of those things at one time. But for me, I think art, creativity, whatever you want to call it, has definitely been the gateway by which I've been able to give voice to experiences that I might not have ever had a casual conversation about in life, but it has showed up in my art.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So for you, it's not necessarily masking, like hiding, but this is my way of processing and releasing.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yep. Mm-hmm. It's language. And I would say, I don't think I've ever masked my mental and emotional struggles behind art. But I think this person is probably asking, has it ever been a channel in which you've expressed your mental and emotional struggles? But because this can go so many ways. Because I do think you can mask with art.
Because you can create and produce and not do the inner work and deal with yourself.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And so
whoever you want to be, and when you portray it,
for sure.
so, yeah.
And you guys can speak to both, you know, if you want to speak to both, processing and expressing, or those moments when you're like, I'm gonna keep putting stuff out there, but I ain't gonna do the inner work to make sure I'm really well. Yeah,
It's hard. That is
It's
hard.
hard.
It's very hard. My whole first EP was it was a process for me personally and artistically and creatively. I feel like I was dealing with certain things and I was talking to certain people. I wasn't necessarily masking for everybody, but for the things that I could not say, I sang them. The emotions that I couldn't really convey, like I couldn't really tell you how deep this pain was. I'm just gonna sing it. You know, I'm just gonna write it in these songs and I'm gonna sing it out. And that's really what it was. But there were times, not that I masked with my art, but I masked for my art, if that makes sense. So I can go and do a show, but be super, super anxious and depressed. But I'm gonna snap it on and yeah, let me go do this. You know what I mean?
I think that's so real for so many people.
Yeah. And I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, honestly, as long as you're doing the work behind closed doors. I don't know, because
I think there are moments when it's both. And that's I think that's the thing that makes the existence of creative people so complex, because there are days where you have to show up when you're not your best self, because you know on the other end of showing up is going to benefit somebody, and that's the work that you commit to.
Yeah.
Crazy. Some of the things I've done, or like I was in the worst depression that I was in, and I didn't want to deal with it, but I've come up with some of my greatest work in it. It's been moments where I was feeling totally perfect and came up with crappy designs. It's embracing that emotion, no matter how you feel, and showing up. No matter what it is, I can show you, or I can go down a list of just like, oh, I designed this, and literally tell you, I was going through all these emotions. I was going through substance abuse and all this other stuff, but it turned out perfectly, and you never would know. And it's kind of like wearing a mask, where it's just like, yeah, you see the work, oh my God, this work is amazing, but you didn't know the struggle and the process that it took to actually finish it or to go through it. But it's also like navigating that and realizing, okay, this isn't how I want to live my life. This isn't how I want to create. This isn't how I want to do things. And kind of taking the first step of like, all right, let me fix this and try to figure this out.
So would you all say that whether you processed or whether you masked, what would be insight that you would offer to others?
First, like being honest with yourself. We often have a lot of, we can literally tell us or talk ourselves out of things, of just like, yeah, I'm fine. Yeah, I'm fine. I'm okay. I'm good. Everybody, I wouldn't say everybody, but most people have that tendency to be like, I'm okay. I'm good. And we're not. So it's just like opening up, being honest with yourself and being like, okay, I'm not okay. I'm not good. And just kind of, I wouldn't say being okay with that, but realizing that and going forward in that of just like, this is how I'm going to do this. I'm going to maybe say my affirmations, or, not take up substances when I'm feeling this way, or just taking that step of just like, okay, I want to change this. I realize that it's not okay. I want to change this. So I'm going to do this. And it's different for each situation.
I think I agree with Joe's advice, and I think on the other side of that too is just giving yourself permission to be in whatever state you're in, and going from there. Like if I'm in this state, then this is what I need to do, and show up for yourself. I think we make our whole lives about being everything to everyone else, and we leave ourselves out of the equation. And I think a lot of the betterment, a lot of our wholeness is hinging on our ability to be to ourselves what we've been to so many other people, or to learn how to show up as the person we've always needed. because I think that's where the journey started for a lot of us, is that I'm going to commit my life to being who I didn't have when I needed it the most, and make yourself a recipient of that too.
Yeah.
And before Ahji, you join in, I wanna also say, allowing. I think it's also important to allow others. I think sometimes, I don't know if this is a creative thing or what, but I think allowing others to be that person for you too. You know, like letting, I don't know if that's a part of like being so in your head that like you just forget about the outside world, but, or I don't know if that's also because sometimes as creatives, because you're producing and people tie your worth to what you create, that sometimes it's hard to see the people who are there for you as a human.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to allow those who are really willing to be there for you in your humanity, regardless of where you are in your process, give them the permission to also come in that space and support you wherever you are in your journey, right?
Yeah.
Whether you're emoting through your work or whether you're masking and you realize you're not okay, give people who are genuinely for you this space to
That's so
journey
important.
with you, which is hard. I'm not saying that's easy. That causes a lot of vulnerability. I get it.
That's what I was gonna say. That's
But
exactly what I was gonna say.
it's important, right? You cannot go through this alone. As much as we sometimes want to, we need community. You know what I'm saying? Like that, like I said, your emotional and mental wellness is connected with relationships, right? It can be. And so giving people the space to, you know, be a part of that, whatever that looks like. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna say having a tribe is important. I think that I think for creatives, and this has been my experience, vulnerability is a very, very complex thing. Sometimes we feel safe, sometimes we don't. It just depends on like for me, it just depends on what could happen that could affect that vulnerability at that time. You know what I mean? So I have to let myself, first of all, create a tribe of trusted individuals. Know that they are trusted individuals so I don't have to search for trusted individuals. Does that make sense? So now I have my group of people that I know when I'm feeling this type of way or when I'm going through certain situations, I can call one of 5 people.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Because I don't have 12,000 people. You know what I mean? I have one of 5 individuals that I can call that I know who are trusted. That way, vulnerability doesn't become a task, something I have to muster up with certain people at a certain time. You know what I mean? Now I have these people that I can just go to and be free with. And I think you, as a creative, whomever that person is, having a tribe of trusted individuals that you already know you can go to is super important. Is super important.
Mm-hmm. And a plug, Brene Brown. I don't know if you all have heard of her, but Brene Brown, she talks a lot about vulnerability and the courage that it creates. You know, not just the courage it takes, but the courage that it creates when we make a choice to be vulnerable. So yeah, thank you guys for sharing. Last thing, on a lighter note, what fuels your creativity?
A lot of things.
Yes, it's a lot.
A lot of things.
I think the simplest answer for me is knowing that it has the possibility to offer lasting change. Yeah.
Yes, I think a lot of time life itself fuels my creativity. Things that I see, things that I experience, things that I see others experience, ways that I feel like I can help their experiences, things like that. So life itself.
Yep.
It's just solving a problem that is outside of the box that normal people just wouldn't think of. It's kind of like, it's like a superpower. It's just like, how can I do this outside of the box that
Yeah.
somebody else would think of? So it's like a superpower. It's just
Absolutely.
walking down the street and see a building that has like yellow, red, and black on it. You're just like, huh, I can use these colors for this print, or it gives me this emotion that I can apply to whatever I decide to do.
Yep.
And people just look at it and just like, oh, that's a funky building. You're just like, you know what, I kind of like that building. So it's like a secret superpower.
Yeah.
Most definitely.
I love it. Well, thank you guys for being a part of my first soul session. I can't believe that this is a thing. But this is great. I probably said thank you to you guys probably like 10 million times. But seriously, I do appreciate it because you guys took time out, and that makes me emotional. So let me just shut up. But yeah, so last thing, if you want to share your handles, your platforms, your content, the things that you have created, all of that stuff, feel free to do so. Who want to go first? Ahji, we talked about. Go ahead. What you got, sis? What you got?
Hey, my Before EP is out on all platforms, all digital platforms. You can find it everywhere. I am on Instagram at Love Ahji. I'm also on Facebook, but I don't have any room for more friends there. You can follow me at Ahji Love. I'm working on new music currently. And yeah,
Sweet.
look at that.
My person. Yeah, Khas, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm Khas Dock everywhere, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. That's also my website, KHASDOCK.
Yeah, you got some. You got books and stuff.
Yeah,
I do.
Why are you playing?
I have 3 books on Amazon, and I just released a pretty cool ebook for writers and content creators, which is on my website, and it is called The Writer's Speech.
Oh, okay.
I'm forgetting. Yep, it's all on my website.
And what about you, Joe?
So just follow me on Instagram, Joe, JOEVGFX. Website is on its way. Same thing. And then I'm going to announce it here because I haven't announced it anywhere else. I'm releasing clothing brand later this year. So be on the lookout for that.
We get the scoop first. That's
yes.
Y'all get the scoop first.
Ready first.
I got y'all.
But I love it. Seriously, thank you guys. This means more than you guys know. And so I'm just going to stop because I'm going to keep talking. I'm going to cry. So, all right. Thank you guys. I really do appreciate it. For those who choose to watch, thank you guys for watching. And there'll be more coming.
You did it.
That's it.
Congratulations.